All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Wealth Building for Dummies podcast. My name is Kyle Demian, and I'm joined with my buddy Renji Matthew, like always. And today we're going to talk about overcoming adversity and how to do it in your personal life, in your business life, and especially if you're an entrepreneur and maybe you're just getting started, get ready because adversity is going to come up, and this podcast is going to be designed to tell you how to overcome it, how to get through it, and how to come out on the other end of adversity stronger and as a better entrepreneur and person. So, Renji, why don't you go ahead and start us off, I guess, however you want. If you want to dive into talking about different examples of your life and adversity that's come up in business or personal, but when talking about adversity, what's the first thing that kind of comes to your mind with you being an entrepreneur and a husband and a dad? Like, talk to us about adversity and how you get through it.
I think most everyone that faces adversity, they always have that self-doubt that will come in, right? That's we're human. That's going to come up. You have to train yourself to not think that way. But even the best people, I've heard them talk about, that's always going to be there at the back of your mind. But as you get better at it, it's something that you just learn to throw away from your mind real fast, right? Um, so I think planning is always like planning for adversity to come up. And the thing is, you might not know what type of adversity is going to come, right? But there are stuff that you can plan for. That way, okay, if this happens, I know exactly what I need to do. If this happens, I know which direction I need to go. Um, so I think planning is a huge thing. If you just decide to do whatever, you could probably get through it, but it's gonna be a lot harder because you don't have a plan set in place for what action you would take next. I think that's a big thing. And then mindset. We talk about mindset all the time. If you're not growing with your mindset, when trouble comes, uh, you're gonna fail, or you're gonna go. It's gonna be a bigger setback than what it can be if you planned it before. Um, yeah, so that's what I would say. What about you, Kyle?
I think in general, as we talk a lot about entrepreneurship and investing and getting into assets and different things like that, like there's also the mental toughness has to be like one of your top characteristics as an individual, right? Because so many things that are so out of your control can happen and probably will happen, right, throughout your entrepreneurial journey. And one thing that I've heard, and I always try to keep in the back of my head, is to always try to control what I can control or control the controllables, right? If there are things that are outside of your control, why even waste the time or the mental capacity or your energy worrying about something that you can't control, right? Just focus on what can I control in this moment and just really taking it one day at a time. And how can I improve the situation? How can I get one step closer to getting out of this adversity or this trouble, right? And for us as entrepreneurs, not everybody is an entrepreneur, right? And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. And that's where people get separated from the crowd. We've seen a lot of times people come in and even try to do the same business as us, and they don't last because of adversity. At the first sign of adversity, they almost crumble and fail and they go back to their old paths, which, like I said, it comes down to having mental toughness and being able to get through these moments and push through them and keep going and getting better every single day, right? And so I see it like adversity. There's really like three different ways adversity can strike you. There's either, personal adversity. Sometimes there's adversity in your business. And also sometimes there's just monetary adversity, right? So let's kind of break it down actually and maybe talk about, I guess monetary adversity could kind of be personal, but if we're talking about specifically like personal versus business adversity, Renji, if you can, let's actually just share some stories of like adversity we've gone through in our lives and how we overcome it. And I know you've been in real estate for a while, and I think you were sharing that you've had some adversity in the past through real estate. So kind of walk us through like what happened, what did you do, and like how did you overcome it? Because this could be something that other people go through too in their investing journey and being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, so I'll share a couple, and if there's something that sticks out to you, feel free to jump in, Kyle.
Yeah, for sure.
So business wise, one of the things, COVID hurt everybody personally and entrepreneurs, right? So
Yeah, talk about both. That's true.
yeah. So one way that it hurt us in business was, especially in real estate. You guys know there, and a lot of you might not know, but there was a memorandum when COVID happened that you couldn't evict people because, especially if they lost their jobs and stuff. So we had several properties that rent wasn't being paid, and we try to work with them as much as we can because we don't want to just kick people out. We want to be working with because the better relationship you have with the tenants, the better they will stick with you and stuff like that too. Um, but that hurt us a lot because it was a long period of time where people couldn't pay rent, so we're paying the mortgages on those properties. And we know friends of ours that lost their business because of that, because they didn't have enough of a savings. And it didn't hurt them much because they just sold the properties, and in COVID time, properties values went up a lot. So we could have done the same thing, but we didn't want to because we wanted to be able to. Our long-term goal was to have passive income. But this is going back to what we talked about before. If you plan for it before, and what we did was we put most of our money into savings because both me and my partners are younger, so we were like, okay, this is more of a long-term goal, so we have passive income, so we can retire with that. And this is back when I was nursing before I got into this field and stuff like that. So we had enough of a savings that during that time, it got depleted. And then we ended up using some of our credit cards and stuff like that. And so we got into debt because of it too. But thankfully, because we held out, afterwards, we had the government help people, businesses that didn't fire their, employees. And in our case, we didn't evict people or, we had those losses. And then something we've talked about in a previous podcast, we were also able to write off all that because it's expenses as a business. So we got to keep more of money in tax wise too. So we had tax credits. There's different things. But what I'm saying is, if we didn't plan for that, we probably would have had to sell our properties too. Again, that wouldn't have been a bad thing. We would have made money on the properties, but it would put us back where we'd have to start over, right? And so
Hmm.
that's one example for business wise. Personal wise, we've had a lot of issues because of me. I've gotten into business different things before, and I've mentioned this on a previous podcast where I wasn't mentally tough or I didn't work on my mental growth, right? So every time adversity happened, I would just give up on the business. The problem is we spend money into the business, so like now you're in debt, right? So that's happened a lot. So something I've learned from something I've done differently now is I have a lot of mentors I look up to that I go to whenever I face some kind of adversity instead of just trying to do it by myself. And because of that, we're where we are now. We're a lot better off now, um, and we look to God for a lot of things. We get a lot of spiritual strength that way to be able to hold out on a lot of things. So we get to that point where we're successful too. But yeah, if we could sit here and talk about different stories all day, but I think the biggest thing is getting ready, having people that you can look up to for advice that have gone through those troubles, and then getting mentally prepared and like, are you looking for solutions for anything that comes up, or are you the type that likes to sit there and say, "Oh, this is not going to work. That's not going to work," and then just give up? Because if you're the latter, you're never going to do anything. And I'm telling you, this is
Yeah.
because that's who I was. That's exactly who I was. But once you make that mental shift and you look for the solutions instead of always complaining about it, then whenever those problems come up again, now you know exactly what to do. It's just a ladder. It's just a step on the ladder to get to where you want to be. And each step is another challenge. It's like those video games we used to play growing up. It's like you beat one boss level villain, you go to the next one. And now those boss level villains are not as hard because now you're leveled up in your, it's the same analogy, but in life. As you go
Yeah.
through each difficulty, you learn from it. So something that I've been doing is being grateful for those challenges because those helped me become the person I am. Because if I didn't go through those challenges, I wouldn't be who I am today. Because I used to pray when I was younger, God help me to be in an easy job, help me to have easy day at school and stuff like that. But it didn't make me prepare me to be a stronger person. Those challenges come to you to make you be the stronger person, right? God doesn't just give you an easy life. He puts opportunities around you to make you into the person he wants you to be. I'll
Absolutely.
end it there. What about you, Kyle? What are some of the personal or business issues you've had in the past that helped you become where you are now?
Yeah. Well, one thing I want to actually toss back to you really quickly is you mentioned like planning and preparing, which I think is the two best things you can do is just know that it's going to happen. That way you are prepared. But you plan to prepare by, like you said, expanding your mental growth or your mental toughness. Like, what are some ways that you are actively expanding and growing mental toughness? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, so listening to podcasts. I'm always listening to some kind of podcast. Even so, before, when I was younger, every time I worked out, I would listen to something to help me get pumped up. Now I listen to podcasts. Honestly, I've gotten to a point where I'll try to drown out the workout so that it's not as hard mentally, like, because I'll just push through it because I'm trying to focus on the podcast. And
Hmm.
yeah, listening to podcasts, reading, you know, putting instead of just listening to music all the time, that's not helping me grow anywhere. Listening to podcasts and reading books, and I read the Bible a lot too. There's different things you can uh, put positivity that you can listen to, and one of the podcasts I listen to right now is Empire podcast by Bedros Keuilian. Learn a lot from that, so there's different podcasts I listen to. Another one I really enjoyed when I got into the growth mindset was Dave Anderson, Game Changer podcast, which is like it it teaches you to be mentally tough, So listening to podcasts and reading books and stuff, I think, is the biggest thing for me. At least it was for me.
Absolutely. And you mentioned, working out, and this is another area where I think like fitness and business go hand in hand in so many in so many different ways, right? And
Yeah.
working out and continually going through, pushing yourself, like it all applies to business too. And, you'd ask me some different adversities and stuff that I've gone through and currently am going through, like as of this recording. A week ago, I tore my ACL and my meniscus. So, like, I'm going through a personal adversity, a personal injury that came from, playing basketball in like a Sunday pickup league that me and my buddies do. So, not even related to business, right? But now it's kind of translating over to affecting my business is I'm going to have to take off some time for rehab, for surgery, for recovery. And, it's going to be a long drawn out process. But at the end of the day, I can only control what I can control, and I was talking to my girlfriend and last week, like I took off some days and was in pain and recovering. And I told her, I was like, I can't just keep taking days off. Like the business has to keep going. Like you're going to hold me accountable Monday, 9 a.m. I'm working, and I got to get back to it because business doesn't take any days off. And it's funny. I have a mug that says, no one cares, work harder, right? Nobody cares what's going on in your business life. Nobody cares what's going on in your personal life. Like business and life just keeps going on for every other person, right? So you can't slow down and be held up with whatever adversity you're going through. You just got to find a way to push through it and just keep making things happen, right? And one thing that, as we're talking, it came back to me that I remember when I was a kid, my dad had taught me, like when we were maybe 5, 6, or 7, and like we didn't get our way, like we would cry, right? The natural thing is for a kid to do is when they don't get their way, they would cry. And my dad, this is so weird because it's just coming back to me. He used to always tell me, stop crying. It's not going to help you get anything. And maybe as adults, we don't cry anymore, but we complain, right? Or we have self pity or we feel bad for ourselves. But like literally, that does not help us accomplish or get anything. You know what I mean? Like we have to get over it and just get back to work and take the next step progressing forward. And it's so true. And it applies to kids just as much as it does, applies to us as adults. Like crying isn't going to get your way, complaining isn't going to get your way, but what can you control and what can you do to get yourself out of the adversity? When we had Richard on our call last week, 2 weeks ago, he was $45,000 in debt. Richard, what are you going to do? I'm going to get into real estate, start making money. He wasn't complaining. For us, we've both been in business and we both struggled at the beginning. What are we going to do? We're going to keep showing up, going to work. We're going to keep making the calls. We're going to keep following up with people. When people tell us no, we're going to follow up with them, a month or two later to see if maybe things have changed. Like you always have to be taking steps into progress, taking steps or you know, taking action in ways that are actually going to lead you forward to getting to your end result. And one thing that we kind of talked about the other day, Renji, was, your why and why your why is so important. And your why is also so important when you're going through adversity, because if you don't have a big enough why, at the first sign of adversity, typically is when most people quit. If your why is so big, so powerful, you will go through anything to achieve it. And those are just some other things to keep in mind. Focus on your why. Know from the beginning that it's not going to be easy. Adversity is going to come up, but it's not about, when is it going to come up? The question should be, how are you going to overcome it? How are you going to keep going? And then another thing I do to help myself when I'm going through adversity is to focus on gratitude and journaling. Anytime I've ever focused on gratitude and what I'm thankful for, is very easy for me to get myself out of this bad headspace where I'm feeling bad for myself. I've never felt bad about myself or about my life after going through 5 minutes of gratitude journaling, just writing down what I'm thankful for. And it's not like, it's not the littlest things. I'm thankful that I woke up today, because some people didn't. I'm thankful that I can walk today, even if I only have one leg at the moment, right? I'm thankful that I can still get around. I'm thankful I have a roof over my head. I'm thankful I can eat. Like, go through that and then get deeper. I'm thankful that my parents are both still alive. My parents, are still in my life. Like, people don't have that. And it's these little things that we take for granted, other people don't have. And we just need to remember that, hey, life is beautiful, right? Life is great. We don't have it that bad. We just need to get over this little hiccup we're going through. And I think that's all I've got to say for today's show. Reggie, I don't know if you want to wrap us up with anything else, but go
Yeah,
ahead.
I would add the gratitude thing. I think when something that helped me also start on that journey of mental toughness was writing down all the things I'm grateful for. And this is one of my things that I do in the morning is I'll 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 pray, and in my prayer I'll say thank you God for Nina, Ezra, like all the people I'm thankful for, all the things that we take for granted, and then praying for people that are going through struggles. When you think about other people's struggles and you're thankful for, like you said, thankful for all the things that are around you, little things won't matter to you anymore. Little
Absolutely.
struggles won't be big issues anymore. So being grateful for all all the people in your life, all the even people that you fight with. Be thankful that they're there to be able to, if you have siblings that you fight with, be thankful that you have them in your life, right? To be able to do that, because like you said, Kyle, there's a lot of people don't have family, don't have their dad or their mom that they can talk to, and you get to that point when they're gone, you're thinking back, man, I should have spent more time with them and stuff like that. And that's actually, like we talked about, me and Kyle got into doing got into our entrepreneurial journey to be able to spend more time with family and stuff. And yes, you're gonna have to put time aside to work on your business and stuff at first, but eventually it's all compounding, right? You're going to have more
Hmm.
time. You're going to have, and that's again why we push passive income so much on this podcast, because once you, yeah, you're going to start out, you're going to have difficulties getting your first assets and stuff like that, finding out what that is and stuff like that, but it all compounds. Just like your mental toughness, it compounds into becoming stronger. All the adversity you go through as you learn it again compounds into being mentally tougher. Businesses that you start, all of this compounds into better things. So I know we talk about compounding in assets and retirement accounts and stuff, but it can go mentally. Compounding can be something that can
Everything compounds. Yeah,
exactly. So every time you give up on something, that's going to compound to be worse in the future than if you take that compounding effect on learning from all your failures and stuff like that. That's going to make you so much better mentally and spiritually and in business and with your family. It's going to be something you're like, if you decide to have kids, that's going to be something your kid's going to go grow up watching you going through those things and be like, oh, this is how my dad acted. So instead of me complaining, let me act like him or something, whatever.
absolutely.
Uh, but yeah, it's not just affecting you; it's also affecting the people around you. Because even though you don't realize it, people are watching you. Your family's watching you. Your your spouse, if you have a spouse, your boyfriend, girlfriend, your kids—they're all watching you to see how you will react when adversity comes. And if you always act negatively, it's easier for them to act negatively too. But if you're always acting positively and learning and overcoming those, they're going to look up to you for that. So these actions are not only making things better for yourself, but it's also making things better for people around you.
100%. I love that.
Yep.
And that's a perfect close to this podcast today on overcoming adversity and how to do it in your personal and or business life. As always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Let us know what questions you guys have on money, business, building wealth, investing, real estate, taxes. That's basically what we cover here, a little bit of everything. And as always, thank you guys for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.